Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome to Soulful Saturdays with Saylor. Around here, we cut through the noise, ditch the fluff, and dive straight into what matters: spiritual wellness, radical self acceptance, and unapologetic soulful living. Each week, I'll bring you truth with a side of sass, reflections that wake you up, and reminders that you are glorious. So, whether you've got your journal, your coffee, or that wild, messy bun, you are exactly where you need to be. Today, we're going to talk about softening without losing yourself. So, let's get real for a second. Softening doesn't mean shrinking. It doesn't mean disappearing into the background just so everyone else can feel comfortable. It doesn't mean giving and giving until there's nothing left of you. Softening is not about surrendering your power. It is about showing up rooted, present, and fully alive while still keeping your heart open. I want you to think about this for a moment. How many times have you walked into the room ready to give some love, only to quietly disappear because you didn't want to rock the boat? Maybe you smiled, maybe you nodded, maybe you even said, "It's fine." When inside, girl, you were screaming, "No, it's not fine." Yeah, I see you. Yes, I do. And guess what? You're not alone. Here's the thing. So often, love gets confused with self abandonment. We think being soft means being weak. But let me tell you something: softness is strength wrapped in a heart. Softness is about leaning in without losing yourself. It's about showing up with tenderness without leaving your truth at the door. So today we're going to peel back those layers, the layers where your love runs deep, where your heart is open, but somehow your voice gets lost in the shuffle. We're going to talk about how to love fiercely and softly at the same time, how to say yes when it feels right and no when it doesn't, without guilt, without disappearing, and without giving up your sparkle. And by the end of this episode, you're going to see that softening isn't shrinking. It's choosing presence over pretense, clarity over chaos, and connection over compromise. So you may want to buckle up for this one, just because it's time to soften without self abandonment. Okay, let's talk about how this actually shows up in everyday life. Because this isn't some big dramatic moment where you announce, "Hey, today I'm abandoning myself." No, you're not going to do that. No, this is the stuff that is sneaky. It shows up looking like kindness. It sounds like flexibility. It feels like love. It's the moment when someone asks you what you want for dinner and you say, I don't care. Whatever you want." Even though you absolutely do care. It's when you agree to something that doesn't sit right in your gut, but you tell yourself, "It's not a big deal. I'll just go with it." It's when you swallow your feelings to avoid a hard conversation because keeping the peace feels safer than telling the truth. And here's the kicker: most of the time, you don't even realize you're doing it, because somewhere along the way, many of us learned that being agreeable meant being lovable. Being easy meant being accepted. Being low maintenance meant being safer to keep around. So we adapt, we adjust, we smooth things over. We tell ourselves we'll just be kind, just being thoughtful, just being supportive, and slowly, quietly, we start editing ourselves out of our own lives. We overgive because we don't want conflict. We overextend because we don't want disappointment. We overfunction because we don't want to feel rejected. And let me be clear. This isn't because you're weak. It's because you care deeply. You value connection. You want love to feel safe. But here's what's happening. And this is a pattern, and it's a pattern that runs unchecked. Resentment begins to whisper, not loudly at first, just little thoughts like, why am I always the one adjusting? Why do I feel so tired after spending time with people I love? Why do I feel invisible even when I'm right here? That's not you being dramatic. That's not you being sensitive. That's your inner self raising its hand saying, uh-huh, I'm still here. Remember me? Because when we constantly shape ourselves around everyone else's needs, your own needs don't need to disappear. They just wait. And the longer they wait, the louder they get. And eventually, what started as kindness turns into exhaustion. What started as flexibility turned into frustration. What started as love turns into quiet resentment. And I know that's not what you want. You don't want to love people with a clenched jaw and a tired heart. You want to love freely. You want to show up open. You want relationships that feel nourishing, not draining. So if any part of you is hearing this and thinking, oh, crap, that's me. Wow, that's me. I want you to hear this part loud and clear. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not selfish for wanting space, voice, or truth in your relationships. You've just been practicing survival instead of alignment. And the beautiful part, awareness is the turning point. Because once you see the pattern, you can choose differently. And that's exactly where we're going to head right now. Because we're going to go from awareness to empowerment. And I want you to take a moment. I want you to take a breath with me. That's right. Let's do that for just a second. Whew. Go ahead and take a deep breath and let it go. Because this is the moment where we're going to make a shift. We've named the pattern. We've seen how easy it is to disappear in the name of love. But here's the truth that changes everything. You don't have to harden to stop abandoning yourself. You don't need a wall. You don't need armor. You don't need to become cold, distant, or unbothered. What you need is an anchor. See, boundaries aren't walls that shut people out. Boundaries are the anchors that hold you steady. They don't block connection, they protect clarity. They let you stay rooted in yourself while still being open to others. Because the goal here isn't to love less, it's to love without losing yourself in the process. Imagine this. Instead of immediately saying yes when someone asks you something of you, you pause. Just a tiny pause, long enough to check in with your body, your gut, your truth. Not what do they need from me, but what feels aligned for me. So that's extremely powerful, and I want to repeat it one more time. So this tiny pause When you check in with yourself, you're going to ask yourself the following question. And it's not this one. What do they need from me? You are not going to ask that question. You are going to delete that question or anything that is remotely close to it. And you are going to say the following question. What feels aligned for me? That's the pause. And it has power. And I know for some of you listening, even the idea of pausing feels uncomfortable. It will. It's okay because it's something new, because you've trained yourself to respond quickly, to smooth things over, to keep the energy calm. But calm on the outside doesn't mean peaceful on the inside. Real peace comes from honesty. Now, honesty doesn't mean blunt or harsh. You're not out there throwing some truth bombs like confetti. This is where the softness stays. Soft boundaries sound like this. I'd love to help, but I can't commit to that right now. It can sound like, that doesn't work for me, but here's what I can do. And you could also try this one. I need some time to think about that before I answer. Can you see and feel the difference of these? These are the responses that you want to be able to practice. No apologizing for existing, no over explaining your right to have limits, just clarity wrapped in kindness, presented through strength and confidence. Because here's something most of us never learned. People don't feel safer when you abandon yourself for them. They feel safer when they know where you stand. When your yes actually means yes. When your no is honest, not hidden behind resentment. That's what creates real trust. And listen, I get it. This is not going to happen overnight. If you've spent years being the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who holds everything together, shifting into self-honoring can feel awkward at first. Your voice, it's going to probably shake. Your stomach might actually do flips. And you might worry that someone will be disappointed. But discomfort doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It usually means you're doing something new. So think of it like learning to stand differently in your own life. At first, it feels unfamiliar, then it feels intentional, and eventually it feels natural. Because when you start anchoring into your truth, something beautiful happens. You stop negotiating your worth in every conversation. You stop scanning the room to see who needs you to shrink. You stop editing yourself to be easier to love. And suddenly your relationships begin to breathe because there's more honesty, clarity, less guessing, less resentment. You don't feel like you're performing connection. You feel like you're actually in it. That's the magic of boundaries with softness. They don't push people away. They invite the right kind of closeness in. So if you take nothing else from this moment, take this. You are allowed to be kind and clear, open and grounded, soft and self-honoring. You don't have to choose between love and yourself. You get to have both. And beautiful souls, that's where relationships stop feeling like something you manage. You start feeling like somewhere you can truly rest. There was a time that I thought being loving meant being endlessly accommodating. You need something? I'm your girl. Plans changed? No problem. Feelings hurt? Ooh, let me fix it. I wore flexibility like a badge of honor. Thought I was being compassionate, thought I was being mature. Turns out I was just really well practiced at disappearing. Not dramatically, not in some movie scene way, just little edits, a little swallow the truth moments, little it's fine lies that I told with a smile. And listen, I wasn't trying to betray myself. I was trying to keep the peace, trying to be loved, trying to make sure everyone felt comfortable, except the one person I kept leaving out of the comfort plan was me. Funny how that works, right? But here's what I learned. Soft doesn't mean silent. Kind doesn't mean compliment. And loving people doesn't require you to slowly fade in the wallpaper. You can be warm and honest. You can be gentle and clear. You can hold someone's hand without handing over your voice. These days, when I walk into a room, I don't scan for how to fit in anymore. I check in with myself first. And if I feel myself starting to shrink, I don't panic. I just come back. I come back to my breath. I come back to my truth. I come back to me. Because the real magic, the right people don't need the version of you that disappears. They need the one who stays, that stays true to herself with a soft heart, clear voice, and very much here. So let's bring this into real life because this is where the rubber meets the road. And it's one thing to nod along and think, yeah, boundaries sounds great. And it's another thing to live them when you're standing in your kitchen or sitting in a meeting or answering a text that already has your stomach in knots. So let me paint you some moments and see which one feels familiar. You get a message from someone asking for a favor. You read it and instantly you feel that pull, not excitement, not willingness, but obligation. And before you think, your fingers start typing, sure, I can do that. That's approval talking, not alignment. Now imagine this instead. You read the message, you pause, you breathe, you check in, and maybe your answer becomes, I can't help with that this week, but I hope it works out. No drama, no over explaining, no guilt spiraling, just truth. That's what alignment sounds like. Or maybe it's not a favor, maybe it's a conversation. Someone says something that doesn't sit right with you. Old you might laugh it off, change the subject, or swallow the discomfort to keep things smooth. But the new, anchored, soft, but rooted you might say, hey, I know you probably didn't mean it this way, but that didn't land well with me. Oh, excuse me. Let me say that one more time for you. Hey, I know you probably didn't mean it that this way, but that didn't land well with me. You're not attacking, you're not accusing, you're just being honest. Soft boundaries don't create explosions, they create clarity. And here's another one. You're with family, friends, coworkers, and the conversation turns into one of those emotional dumping grounds. Suddenly, You're the therapist, the fixer, the absorber of everyone's feelings. And you feel yourself shrinking under the weight of it. Your old pattern says, stay, listen, carry it. That's what loving people do. And here's your new pattern. This is what it's going to say. I care about you, but I don't have the capacity to hold all of this right now. That sentence alone can change your entire emotional life. Because here's the truth. Connection doesn't require self-sacrifice. It requires presence. And you can't be present when you're depleted. So now I want to talk to you about something really important here, because when you start showing up this way, people might notice. Some will adjust easily, some will even respect you more, and some might be surprised. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because they've gotten used to the version of you who always said yes. And that's not betrayal, that's growth. And growth in relationships can feel wobbly at first. Conversations might feel a little unfamiliar. You might hear your own voice and think, wow, did I really just say that? Yes, you did. And look at you, still kind, still loving, still standing. Because that's where you're practicing here, staying connected without disappearing. You don't have to withdraw your love to honor yourself. You don't have to create distance to create truth. Sometimes it's as simple as saying what's real for you in the moment. And here's what's beautiful. When you start doing this, relationships get cleaner. People don't have to guess how you feel. You don't have to carry silent resentment. You stop replaying conversations in your head, wishing you'd spoken up. You walk away feeling whole instead of drained. That's the shift. Because the goal isn't to become someone who says no all the time. The goal is to become someone whose yes actually means yes, and someone whose presence feels real, not performative. Someone who shows up fully, not halfway, hidden between politeness. And let me tell you something. When you show up that way, the right relationships deepen. The healthy ones breathe. The ones built on mutual respect grow stronger, because authenticity invites authenticity. So this week, I don't want you trying to overhaul your whole life. You're not doing a personality renovation here. I just want you to practice one thing. Before you respond to someone, pause. That's it. Not a big dramatic pause, just a breath, a check-in, a tiny moment to ask yourself, is this coming from alignment or approval? That one question can change the way you move through your relationships. Because when your answers start coming from alignment, something incredible happens. You don't feel like you're negotiating for your place in people's lives anymore. You feel like you belong there as yourself. And beautiful soul, that's the kind of connection that we all desire and we all deserve. So this is the part where I want you to feel what this could actually look like in your life. Not in some perfect Instagram quote way, but in the real, everyday, messy, beautiful way you live. Because when you start softening with boundaries instead of without them, something subtle but powerful begins to change. First, relationships start to feel cleaner, not perfect, just honest. You stop carrying all those unspoken frustrations. You stop replaying conversations in your head, wishing you said something different. You stop smiling on the outside while feeling tight on the inside. There's space for truth to breathe. And let me tell you, truth is where real connection lives. Second, resentment starts dissolving. Not because people suddenly become perfect, but because you're no longer abandoning yourself to keep things smooth. You're not silently keeping score anymore. You're not giving from exhaustion. You're not showing up half present because part of you feels unseen. Instead, you start giving from choice. And chosen love feels completely different than obligated love. Chosen love feels lighter, freer, more genuine. And here's the big one: your compass stays intact. You know that inner knowing you have, that quiet voice that always tells you that's true for you. When you stop overriding it to keep others comfortable, it gets louder in the best way, clearer, stronger. You start trusting yourself again. You stop walking into rooms wondering who you need to be for everyone else. You walk in knowing who you are. And that doesn't make you harder to love. It makes you easier to connect with because people aren't guessing where you stand anymore. They're meeting the real you. That's where relationships shift from draining to nourishing. That's where love stops feeling like something you perform and starts feeling like somewhere you can actually rest. And I want you to hear this part deep in your bones. You don't have to become a different person to live this way. You don't have to toughen up. You don't have to shut down your heart. You just have to stay with yourself while you show up for others. That's it. Soft heart, strong roots, open hands, clear truth. And when you live from that place, you don't just protect your peace. You expand your capacity for love. You're standing in your truth and you're expanding your capacity for love. Not the kind that costs yourself, but the kind that includes you. So before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with this, something simple, but powerful enough to change the way you move through your whole week. This isn't about suddenly becoming someone who sets perfect boundaries or says all the right things. This is all about awareness, tiny shifts, small, honest moments where you stay with yourself instead of abandoning yourself. So here's your invitation. This week, before you respond, before you say yes, before you smooth something over, before you agree just to keep things easy, pause. Just one breath and ask yourself, is this coming from alignment or approval? Not judgment, not pressure, just curiosity. Because the more you ask that question, the louder your inner compass gets. And the more you listen, the easier it becomes to love people without losing yourself in the process. You deserve relationships where your heart can stay soft and your truth can stand tall. So walk into this week rooted, open, and fully present in your life. And remember, you don't have to shrink to stay connected. You just have to stay you. Yeah, stay you. And that, my friends, yep, this is our episode on softening without losing yourself. Thanks for tuning in, beautiful souls, because ah, take this week to listen to those whispers. And remember, your soul knows the way. And as you move through your week, carry this truth in your heart. You are worthy, you are radiant, and your presence matters. And never forget, stay soulful, stay sassy, stay you. I'm going to see you next week, beautiful souls. Same time, same vibe, same glorious energy.